Don't put that on camera.
No. Anyway, I'll edit it. So I'm Vince. I'm Backyard Mangoes, and I'm with
Alex. This is Tropical Acres Farms.
And today we have a mango tree. A lot of people have been asking about replanting or repotting a tree.
Mapulehu is a mango from Hawaii. It's kind of similar to like 015, Zil 015, if you've ever had that. But it's a kind of not a huge mango, but it gets nice.
And this is getting mid-February. And I know, like, for my trees, a lot of different things are starting to show new growth. And people are always asking, when do we repot a tree to move this up to the next size?
Okay, so we here sell a lot of small trees, and we know that a lot of our customers want to grow them in pots, at least for a period of time, sometimes permanently, and they want to know when to move the tree to a larger container size. And if you don't have a lot of experience with this, you don't really know what to look for. But we recommend, when you're dealing with a small tree, like in this case a 1 gallon tree, to go to the next logical container size most of the time. So here at our nursery, with a tree like this, it starts out as a 1 gallon. We graft it when it's in a 1 gallon pot like this. Now there's not really much in the way of standardization when it comes to container sizes and what we say like a gallon size is. Okay, there are pots that are slightly smaller than this that we would call a 1 gallon, and maybe some that are slightly larger. And we use, lots of different pots here, but for purposes of this video, we're going to call this a 1 gallon pot, and we're going to put it today in a 3 gallon pot.
So the question, though, a lot of people always have, and you happen to have a pot, I'm going to grab it real quick. Why not just jump from the 1 gallon all the way up to this? What's this, a 7?
This is a 7.
And so why not jump? Because I know people are like, oh, bigger pot, bigger roots, I want it to grow. So what's the problem with that?
So there isn't necessarily a problem with putting this 1 gallon in this 7. But here in the nursery setting, this tree would not qualify as a 7 gallon tree. It's too small at this point. So the next size up from this is a 3 gallon pot, which I have right here. So if we're going to sell this tree and we want to sell it as a 7 gallon, if we put this straight in a 7 like that, it's going to look undersized. Now that doesn't mean that nobody will buy it at that size, but the expectation for this tree would be normally to go into a 3 gallon, and then in this container at this height and size, it would be kind of considered normal for a 3 gallon pot. Now, if you are going to be growing it permanently in a pot, then a 7 gallon is still too small. But a permanent pot is usually like a 45 gallon pot or something like that. They're not necessarily cheap for pots, right? And so some people want to defer that cost or that eventuality, and they can do that by gradually stepping the tree up to larger container sizes. A lot of people just want to hold on to the tree for a while until they decide where they're going to plant it, or they find a spot to plant it. And in that case, it would not make sense to immediately put this in a much larger pot. And a 7's not that much bigger, but then you get into 15 gallons and 25 gallons, and you might not need to do that if you're going to be planting that tree within 2 years or less. So
what do you look for? So
okay,
you have this size there. That's about what, 2.5 feet to?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
I don't have a measuring tape with me, but well, we look for a couple things. We look for girth of the trunk, but and the height of the plant too. But actually, the most important thing is if we gently were to remove this, and we will in a moment, if we see that the roots have kind of filled out the pot pretty well, then it's probably about ready to go into a larger container size. Because if we wait much longer than that, there's a tendency for them to become what we call root bound, where the roots start to run out of space, if you will, to grow, and they start to kind of circle around the pot. And if they're left in that condition for too long, they become unhealthy, unthrifty, and you can even plant a tree like that, and a lot of times it will still struggle even if you take good care of it. So we want to avoid them becoming root bound in the first place, and the way we do that is by stepping them up, you know, when they're about due, instead of just leaving them in the pot well beyond the point of being due to go to a larger pot.
So can we look at those roots and see
Yeah.
how that one is?
Sure. Okay. So you can see here.
Hold on.
I don't know how well it will show in the video, but you can see. You can see how we're starting to see the roots on the side here and in the bottom. Okay. So, but it's not root bound yet, because if it's root bound, you'll see roots all over the sides. Okay. There won't be much give to the root ball. So this guy is ready to go into the next size, and we don't want to leave it in here too much longer to avoid it becoming root bound. So
show us how to do it.
Yeah, okay. It's pretty simple. So we're going to put this into this 3 gallon. So one thing I need to emphasize, when you take a tree, a mango tree, and you're putting it into a larger pot, or if you're planting it in the ground even, you want to be very careful not to be rough with it. You don't want to really squeeze the roots or tear at them, as long as you can avoid it. So we're going to just gently rest this tree on the ground for a moment, and we're going to put a little bit of dirt in here. Now,
let me ask you about the dirt. So at Home Depot and Lowe's, where the average, say, homeowner's going to go, is there a recommended, because you go into the dirt section at Home Depot and they got 20 different bags to choose from. What would be the most ideal thing, say, at a big box store for the homeowner?
Well, we don't shop for soil at big box stores, so I'll start with that. The soil we use is pretty sandy. It's more than 30% sand, in fact. So I always recommend that if you're going to put them in a pot, make sure you have at least a third sand. You can even go higher than that. You can go 50% or above in some cases. And then if you want to mix in, if you're going to Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that, you can mix in like a standard potting mix with that coarse sand, which is like sometimes called builder's sand, or you can instead use something like cactus mix and put in a little bit of Canadian peat in there too. But the most important thing is to make sure that you've got a very nice percentage, at least a third and perhaps 50% of coarse sand that helps with the drainage. Otherwise, if you stick them in straight potting mix, they can get root rot and they can struggle. And that's really, really, really common with people that go and buy potting mix from a big box store and stick their trees into it, whether that's in a pot or in the ground.
Yeah.
So I need to emphasize that.
Yeah, full disclosure, I've done that before years ago when I was just starting sort of this mango journey. I'd go down and get some potting mix and put it in a container, plant something in there, and then usually I would struggle with some sort of problems down the road, and it's too much moisture.
Yeah, very common. So, okay, right. So when we are going to put this in the pot, I gently hold the trunk here, okay, and I look to see how the dirt with the root ball aligns with the top of our pot. One of the errors I see people do is they'll plant these things and they'll plant them low. Remember that when this is getting watered and stuff, the level of the dirt is going to go down. And so if you plant it low, you're kind of, hurting yourself in the short term and long term, because your root system is going to run out of space quicker. So what I'll do is I'll put a little more dirt in here and get it to a point where it's about even with the top here, or close to even as possible. Okay, we're pretty close here now. And then we'll start to fill in the sides. Okay, and then we kind of gently press down here with our fingertips.
So I noticed when you put in the 1 gallon, you didn't try to, say, cut the roots or break apart the original 1 gallon shape that was there.
No, we didn't, but There are instances where we might have to do that, where the roots have grown outside of the pot and you can no longer safely remove the tree from that 1 gallon pot, or if it's become root bound, you kind of have to delicately trim them. So if you're stepping them up at the right pace, you shouldn't have to do that, but it can happen sometimes, and in that instance you can use pruning shears or a sharp pair of scissors usually to cut the pot off of that root ball instead of tearing it out and really damaging the roots potentially and causing shock. So anyway, so you see I've kind of gently pressed down here, okay? And I'm adding a little bit more soil, but the thing I want to emphasize is you want that original soil line here, okay, as it was in the 1 gallon pot, to be the same as it is now in the 3 gallon pot, okay? So we just kind of level it out here, and it's done. Now, because this is in our nursery here, we're going to label this. So this is a Mapulehu mango, okay? And
where's that from?
Mapulehu is a mango from Hawaii.
Yeah.
And it's from the Molokai section, I guess, of Hawaii. And it's probably or almost certainly derived from the Piri, or what we call Bombay here. And it's an Indian, West Indian type flavor. Very, very good. Our tree has grown kind of as a dwarf in Hawaii. I don't believe that's usually the case, but
I'm gonna have to buy that now. You're talking me into buying it. But I gotta buy it as a 1 gallon.
It flowers very easily here, and it's got a very nice, strong Indian type flavor. It has a long shelf life too.
What's the growth habit? Vigorous, medium?
No, it's like a dwarfish tree. We can go look at it and you can see it. We planted it in 2017 and it's not very big.
Yeah, we'll put it at the end of the video.
Yeah, it's a very consistent blooming tree. I don't know how it'll handle anthracnose. I'm kind of skeptical, but it's an interesting variety for collectors for sure. I like the flavor quite a bit. It's kind of similar to like O15, Zil O15, if you've ever had that, but it's a kind of not a huge mango, but it gets nice color.
What about the seed ratio, seed to flesh?
Pretty good, I think. I don't recall it having a large seed. It's normal. Yeah. Okay, let me write this. I'm going to write on the pot here. Okay, we got a Mapulehu, and this is how we avoid
Yeah, I know we were talking before you labeled it that you've actually gotten purchased at sometimes some trees that were mislabeled. I know I've purchased some mislabeled trees a couple of times, and yeah, very important to mark your trees
right when you do it, because otherwise you will forget, or can forget at least. So anytime we're stepping trees up, in fact, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll pre-label our 3 gallon and put the 1 gallon plant inside of the pot before it gets stepped up. So that eliminates any possibility of it being forgotten when we actually step the tree up. Anyway, one of the things I want to emphasize though is you don't want to really make the soil super compact when you're adding that soil. You saw how I was kind of gently pressing. You could force a lot of dirt into there and make it real compact, but if you do that, it's going to harm the ability of the roots to grow in that new soil. You want the roots to expand.
So and kind of firm, but not too...
Yeah, because the only way this tree is going to grow is if its roots grow first.
Yep.
Otherwise, you don't get new canopy, new leaves. So anyway, so now this tree, we've got it in a 3 gallon. We're going to put it right back into the nursery, and that way it gets watered. It's a good idea when you transplant a tree, whether you're putting it in the ground or in a new pot, that you water it that same day, preferably within a brief amount of time of you having repotted it. But that way the roots don't dry out, because when you take them out of their old pot, they're being introduced to perhaps a drier soil condition, and they can get a little shock from that sometimes. So preferably you water that tree soon after you repot it, okay? And so the same process, it'll go through, and usually a new 1 gallon can stay in a 3 gallon for a good bit of time, depending on how big it was when it got put in the 3 gallon. Sometimes up to a year, but certainly at least 6 months or more most of the time. And then the next logical step from here is a 7 gallon pot. but we will go do the process all over again if it reaches that size.
So you ready to? So let's find another one to replant a 7-gallon.
Okay. If
No,
I have, if I have any that are due, I don't know. I don't, like stepping them up prematurely if we can avoid it. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, but this is what the finished product looks like.
Sounds good. And if anybody out there has questions, just put it out here in the comments. All right, so here we are. We're in front of the Mapulehu tree. And how long have you had this tree?
We planted this tree in 2017, but we obtained it from a nursery in Hawaii probably in 2015 or 16, I don't recall. And we grew it in a pot for a little bit before we had a space freed up to plant it. So.
And how tall is this now?
It appears to be about 8 feet tall.
Okay.
Roughly.
Yeah. So 6, 7 years, 8 feet tall.
Yeah, it's grown very slowly. You can see the trees nearby are much, much larger than this one. So this is very much grown like a dwarf. I don't know if it behaves this way in Hawaii, and I don't know whether it will behave this way across Florida because there's just not enough examples of this variety in the wild, so to speak. We have produced them for people over the last 3+ years or so, I guess. So there are some of them out there, but we haven't had any reports on how they're doing for them. For us, it's been a pretty productive tree, a very consistent tree, and a pretty good mango. They can be a little on the small side, especially when it really loads up, but it's a pretty persistent bloomer. Like every year this thing wants to flower, even in years where we didn't think it was going to flower, it ended up flowering when it had a bunch of late growth in the fall, and it had a lot of really fresh, tender tips. It still ended up blooming in the spring. So pretty persistent tree, consistent tree. And so we're glad that we have one. It was not supposed to be a Mapulehu, but it ended up being a Mapulehu. And the only reason I knew what it was is because I had visited Hawaii before and tried Mapulehu in Hawaii. And of course, this tree was sent to us by a nursery in Hawaii. So it was supposed to be an XL, which is a kind of a classically flavored mango they grow in Hawaii. But I knew as soon as I tried it that it was not an XL, and quickly figured out what it was. So anyway, interesting mango, West Indian type of flavor. Sometimes I would say it's similar to mangoes like Jakarta and Zil 015, and sometimes has a hint of like bubblegum flavor that you'll sometimes find in the Valkyrie mango and a few of the other Indian Alfonso type flavors, but it's very much an West Indian type flavor. It's got some resin, some spice. So if you like that kind of Indian flavored mango, you'll probably like Mapulehu. So
sounds delicious. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for watching us.
Sure. I made a meme ice cream and a coconut ice cream.
Tenduai.
Okay.
All right. Let's see what we do. All right. Hi, I'm Vince. I'm Backyard Mangoes. I'm with
Alex
at
Tropical Acres Farms.
And so we have so right now it's spring is in doing I've had a bad day.